Hello and welcome back to your 3ds Max tutorials. So I'm going to use this tutorial to show you a little bit more with the cloth feature, and we're going to use it to create a tablecloth. So we can do this a number of ways. I'm going to use a plane first of all, so I'm just going to draw in a basic plane, and I'm going to give it some more geometry than what's set here, than 4 segments. I might give it, say, 40 by 40. The size doesn't matter for now. And while we're at it, I'm just going to go to my shapes, and I'm going to draw in a rectangle. And within this area now, within the parameters for the rectangle, if you drop down the rendering rollout and enabling viewport, you can see now this rectangle has some solid geometry to it now. So I can leave it as radial. I'm just going to reduce the scale ever so slightly. Okay, now we can go up here to our menu. We can go to the modifier list here and go to garment maker, but I don't think I've touched on this much. I just want to show you as an alternative to this command panel, we can also go to the modifiers here from our menu bar, and you can see it's categorized into different sections. So if I zoom in on this, so just within modifiers, I'm going to go down to cloth, and then you can see here we have garment maker. So I'm going to go with that, and then you can see that we have this segmented garment. It's kind of like a qualified mesh. So we'll go with that. So I'm going to take both of these objects and I'm going to move them up. And we're just going to concentrate on one at a time. So I'll turn off the rectangular one for now, the visibility, and we'll just use this rectangular plane. So I'm going to go in now and create a box. Now the problem with the cloth modifier is it doesn't like sharp corners. So I'll show you what happens. Just for instance, I'm just going to draw in a box shape. I'm going to highlight my plane, go into my modifier list, go down to cloth, and in object properties I'm going to make the plane a cloth, and we'll call it satin this time. And we won't give it any pressure. We just want this to drop. We don't want any gas or any air to expand this particular object. So we'll go with that. Back into object properties, and we want to add an object. So we want to add our collision object, which will be the box. Click on box and collision object, and that's fine. And we just simulate that. And I'll show you what happens. Actually, I need to cancel that. You can see there isn't enough force on this, so there isn't enough bending properties. So I'll cancel that simulation, and into my simulation parameters, and I'm going to give it 3 centimeters per unit. Simulate that now and see how that goes. Okay, and we'll leave it at that. And as you can see here on one side, it's actually penetrated through the cloth because of the sharp corners. Okay, now we can avoid that through playing around with the cloth. We can go back into our modifiers, our parameters, and we can set some we can set the offsets and how much it collides with how much it offsets from the collision object. So rather than messing around with that, I'm just going to erase that simulation, and I'm also going to delete that box. And then let's throw in a chamfer box. So if we go into our extended primitives and draw in a chamfer box, I'm just going to draw over here out of the way for a second. Something like so. And we want to give it fillet segments. We'll give it 4 also, just to make a nice smooth transition. Go to our align tool, and it's already highlighted, so I'm going to align it with the plane in the X and Y position. We leave it on the floor. We don't bother with the Z position. We'll make sure that's not checked. So just in the X and Y, we'll go with that. Back into our modifier command and into object properties. I'm going to add an object. Let's add the chamfer box. Just click it once more and add it, select it as a collision object, and let's run that simulation. Let that run all the way to the end, see how it goes. Okay. So here we have this nice tablecloth after draping over the collision object. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the visibility of that chamfer box. I'm going to turn back on the visibility of the garment that we have. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn off the chamfer box, I meant to turn off the visibility of the plane. And I'm going to move this, I'm going to make a copy of this chamfer box, just a copy. And again I'm going to align it in the X and Y position with the garment. Now we can add the cloth modifier to that garment once more. Back into cloth, object properties. The garment is known as our rectangle. We'll call it a cloth, and we'll give this again a satin just to see, just to compare it to the plane. We'll add an object which is Chamfer Box 2, and this is our collision object. Let's run that simulation. Actually, let's put our centimeters per unit up to 3 again and simulate. Okay, so that worked pretty well. Maybe not as many creases as I'd like, but then the plane is much bigger than the garment, so that's probably what took effect. So what I should do is, I think the quickest thing to do will be to delete the two modifiers that we added. So that's the little trash can, remove modifier from the stack. So let's just remove that, and we'll remove the garment maker. We'll go into the parameters of our rectangle, and we'll make the width, sorry, it's the length, just a little bit more, so it'll drape that little bit nicer for us. Back into our modifier list, garment maker. We can increase the density of the mesh if you want it to be a little bit more refined, like so. So you can see the polygons are now much smaller. It's a much tighter mesh. Into a modifier list and go to cloth, object properties, pick our rectangle, we'll call it satin once more. We're going to add Chamfer Box 2, and we're going to call that our collision object, and let's simulate that. Actually, let's cancel that first because I know it's going to happen. Erase simulation, it's not going to work 100%. To our centimeters per unit, up to 3. Now let's simulate that. And let's see how they fold in comparison to one another. Okay, let's let it run right through to the end. Okay. So you can see they're very similar. Either of them will work, so it's up to yourself which method you prefer. And what we can do is we can select both objects, and I don't think I covered this in any of the tutorials, but you can actually add the same modifier to two different objects. So I have both cloths highlighted, and what I will do actually is we'll give them both the same color so that we can distinguish between the two, or we can compare them, excuse me. So now both of them are the same color. We'll go into our modifier list and we'll shell it out. Shell it out, 1mm is enough. We could actually even go 0.5 because we're working on such a small scale. And let's run a Turbosmooth just to give us that nice realistic smooth transition, and we'll give it maybe 3. That's probably pushing it a bit much. If you push the Turbosmooth too far, it will actually slow down the performance. So you can actually see that garment maker actually is a lot more textured than the plane. Okay, so it depends on what you want to use it for. I'm going to turn off my grid, and just for argument's sake, let's just run a quick render. Okay, now they're pretty nice. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, and I hope you can make some use of it, and I will see you in the next tutorial.